Hey there friends, it's Morgan on Life in Lilacs. I'm gonna be very real today, no makeup, sweating, because Kentucky is going through a massive heat wave as well as most of the South, and they advise all of us to stay indoors during the afternoon hours. So it's very early in the morning here and it is already very hot. And so I'm gonna do Operation Save My Gardenia plant this morning because I planted it a few weeks ago out in what I thought was full sun, a little bit of shade. It does not like it, and I think I'm gonna put it on the west facing side of the house where the sun sets. And I've looked online at some advice, and I think that's gonna save the plant. So I'm gonna do that today. My girls are behind me in the pool, which I did a separate video about setting up that pool. So if you wanna have any information about that, if you feel very hot right now, they are cooling off that way. So we're gonna get this done. Let's start. Are we gonna film this? Are you gonna help me film it? He's not gonna let go of that, is he? He said, I wanna film.
Oh, I got it.
I wanna film. Oh, did Daddy take it? Are you gonna help me, Elam? Are you gonna help me? Back inside now, and it feels so much better after going out and watering all my flowers and saving, hopefully, the gardenia plant. I'm in the air conditioning, and this is how it should feel. But as I sit here and think back on just the day-to-day, everyday tasks that I do of watering my plants, I am doing a little bit of biblical reflection on water and how vital it is. And you know, it's interesting, the gardenia, it's supposed to be a very finicky plant, which is, it needs just the right amount of watering, just the right amount of sun, and if it doesn't get the right soil, all of those things combined, it will wilt and it will turn yellow. And that's what was happening to my plant. So you see me here going through all of the work to put this gardenia plant in a good spot now and hopefully save it. And you know, I had to prepare the soil, had to dig out the roots and get everything ready. And then the final step is to give it that life-quenching water. And I'm sure after this week of really, really high heat in Kentucky, there's gonna be a lot of areas that are gonna be facing some drought conditions. And it's funny, I think of it when I go out to give my plants, I think of it like I'm giving them a drink of water. Like they're almost like my children clamoring for a cup of water. And you know, I'm in a phase of life where that is pretty much my day-to-day routine, is nourishing my children, whether it be through feeding the baby, breastfeeding him, or fixing my kids' lunch, and then now my plants clamoring for my attention and giving them water as well in this heat. And you know, water is so pivotal. God knew that it would be something our bodies would crave, it would be something we needed for life, and it is so, so important. And as I watched just giving each of my plants that life-giving, nourishing water, I cannot tell you how refreshing it was to just stick my hand in the droplets of just look like rain pouring down on them. The ice cold feeling as just this heat is just relentless. And I can imagine if you lived in a desert climate, how much more important water would be. And I love in Psalms, if you go to Psalm 42, King David, he wrote this beautiful line that my head and my heart often come back to. And it is this. He says, as a deer pants for streams of water, this is Psalm 42, verse 1, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. And you know, later in the New Testament, Jesus compares himself to the living water, the water that can really quench our hearts and our souls for what they really need. And you know, it's not the only time that's mentioned in the Bible. There's many, many times, but I want to focus today actually in Jeremiah. So if you go to the book of Jeremiah, He was a prophet that was trying to remind Israel to turn back to the Lord God, because they had turned their brains and their minds and their hearts away on these idols in the nearby peoples that lived around them. And he says in Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 13, "My people have committed two sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water, and have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water." And then the verse just above it, it says, "But my people have exchanged their glory for worthless idols. Be appalled at this, O heavens, and shudder with great horror." So let's talk about this for just a minute. A cistern was a pit that was dug in ancient times to collect the rainwater that would fall and make it a little bit easier for people to get water, which was so sparse in those regions, and just, very, very important to drink and water their livestock and cattle. It was so life-giving. But the one problem with a cistern is it was stagnant water. And often it would go bad or rancid because it just sat there. And if we know anything about water, it needs to be moving to stay fresh and life-giving, or it needs to have chemicals added to make it drinkable. And the other thing, he goes on and he says, it's a broken cistern. So not only are these people turning to these cisterns for their water, and this is all a metaphor we'll get to in a minute. They're broken. It's think of a pit, or maybe it's like a metal basin that has a huge crack running along it, and the water is just leaking out. And God says that He is the spring of living water. Now, what do we know about a spring? A spring is continuously moving. It's refreshing. It's the life-giving water. It's not putrid or rancid. It's fed from a bigger water source, so we don't have to worry about it drying up. And he says, they've forsaken me, the spring of living water, for cisterns that don't hold water. And what is God talking about here? He's talking about the people's hearts. Their hearts have turned away from Him to idols. They're trusting in these idols in these other cultures around them. They may have an idol they worship to bring in fresh crops, or an idol they worship to bring in the rainwater, or an idol for fertility, or an idol for wealth. And they are turning their hearts towards these things instead of to God, the true living God that is a spring of living water. And if I'm honest, we often hear these verses about idols and we separate ourselves a little bit because maybe we don't bow down to a statue. Okay, we may not have that sitting up in our living room, but we do have something that we bow down to a lot. And guess what it is? I don't have it in my hand because I'm recording with it, but our cell phones. How many times a day do we bow our heads and look down and scroll through things that we idolize and we want? Maybe it's somebody you see online that looks like they have a better life than you, or better fashion choices, or prettier, or a better family, or a better home. And if I'm really honest with myself, I often thirst for other things than the living God. How quickly our hearts can turn and stray. For me, at times, it can be the desire for maybe a bigger home to spread out in, because my children at times can make me feel very cramped here. And yet God whispers in my ear, peace, be still. That is not a cistern that will hold water. That thing you think you desire, whether it be the relationship you've been longing for, or a home that's bigger or better than your own, or maybe you're in an apartment and you want a home. Maybe it's a certain amount of wealth. Maybe it's a certain look or appearance. You have a cistern that is, if I can just get my beauty routine right, if I can just have the perfect hair or makeup, or I don't know, fake eyebrows. I don't know what all the treatments are. Maybe your cistern is a car. If I could just have this car that I want. If I could just have this education that I'm longing for. If I could just have this success at work or this prestige. If I could just have this recognition. If more people knew my name and I was famous. These are our cisterns that we hold up to God. They are broken and they are leaking water out of our hearts. They leave us feeling empty. While the water can sit in them for a time and we may think, oh, this is life. This is what it's all about. This fills me up. This makes me happy. God looks at us and says, don't you understand? You have forsaken me, the stream of living water. You could come and splash in me and feel the refreshment, the cold droplets on your face, and you turn to this rancid, broken cistern. Turn back to me, he says, as a deer pants for the living water. God, so my soul pants for you. I just pray today that we would turn our hearts and be reminded again who we belong to and who we should long for. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope that this message spoke to you in some way today, and I so appreciate you all being here. If you live in the South, try and stay cool. It's gonna be a hot one. Get some water, get some air conditioning, and I will see you all soon, friends. Bye, everybody.